All the way back in ye olde 2014, the gaming community was taken by storm when a mysterious free game made its way onto the PlayStation Store, going by the simple, yet peculiar title of PT. The gameplay loop was quite literally that, a loop. All you had to do was walk through two connecting hallways over and over and over again. The twist was that each loop introduced the player to a new and creative way to shit themselves. Naturally, it took off, and after only a few short hours, someone managed to figure out how to beat it, and it took them to a cutscene of Norman Reedus stoically walking into the fog, followed by...
Yeah, baby! That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Sadly, we all know how that turned out. Although I do believe that the narrative beats of Death Stranding likely covered much of what Silent Hill sought to accomplish, it didn't change the fact that the Silent Hill franchise had been put on ice, and that's where it remained for a very long time. Then, like a cicada emerging from hibernation, finally, a brand new entry into the franchise. Silent Hill F, or Silent Hill Fortissimo if you're a music nerd, was going to be the first original major release for the series in over... Holy shit, Downpour is 13 years old? Jesus Christ. So, it had a lot of expectations to live up to, albeit with a pretty easy act to follow. Curiously, though, the game looked to be a very large departure from the series, choosing to take place in rural 1960s Japan, which isn't exactly close to Silent Hill, geographically speaking at least. It's actually about the furthest away you can possibly get from it. But Silent Hill games taking place outside of Silent Hill isn't exactly something new to the series. Silent Hill 3 and Homecoming had many sections set outside of Silent Hill proper, while Silent Hill 4 didn't even have you stepping foot in the town. But even 4's story was still tied to Silent Hill, albeit somewhat indirectly. Silent Hill F is nothing of the sort. It's its own independent, self-contained story. Nothing in the narrative, far as I can tell at least, connects it to the town of Silent Hill. At least not in the traditional sense. But thematically? Yeah, it's definitely a Silent Hill game. Silent Hill is less of a setting and more of a vibe, and F certainly has those vibes. It's got ominous fog, it's got broken bridges, it's got convoluted puzzles, it's got horrifying monstrosities manifested by internalized trauma, and it's got really, really bad combat. What more could you ask for? Look, I'm just going to get to the point. If you like Silent Hill games, then you're going to like Silent Hill F, and you should go play it. Even if you're one of those lore heads that spends all their free time editing Silent Hill wiki articles about Walter Sullivan's circumcision, you'll still like this game. Even though it doesn't fold neatly into the overarching narrative of the Silent Hill series, it doesn't matter. It's a great and really well-written horror game, and there's a lot to enjoy from it. If you don't like Silent Hill games, though, then this one isn't going to change your mind. Although it has all the pros of a Silent Hill game, it does carry all the cons as well. Combat is passable at best and frustrating at worst. Some of the segments go on for way too long, and while the story is overall consistent, there are times where the detours it throws at you ask for, let's say, a certain level of suspension of disbelief. Just hop the damn fence, shoot! There is a literal nightmare hell monster right behind us! Do we really have time to be dicking around in this haunted-ass middle school? But it all comes with the territory, and I think the quality of the game's story and atmosphere makes these shortfalls easy to look past. So yeah, that's it. That's the review. If you like horror games, go out and buy it. Play it. Enjoy it. You'll love it. That's really it. That's all I've got to say about it. Although... Warning, the remainder of this video contains spoilers for, well, the entire game, basically. and it assumes that you've played through it already. If that's something you don't want to see, then you might want to click off the video now. Otherwise, stick around while I go on this long-ass diatribe about how this game's story was so awesome and how much I fucking love it. Yay! Okay, so are we good now? Look, I'm very familiar with the Silent Hill games. Some of my earliest memories were of watching my uncle play Silent Hill on the PS1 when I was probably way too young to be seeing that sort of shit. Yet despite that intimate familiarity with the series, both the good and the bad, Silent Hill F still managed to surprise me. Silent Hill, although created primarily by Japanese developers, is a very American series. Its authentic portrayal of the mid to northern Atlantic is something that feels very familiar to an American like me. Silent Hill F, by contrast, is a very Japanese game. And that makes sense considering the guy who wrote it. Ryukishi07, real name unknown, is most famous for being the creator of the Higurashi series. For those of you that don't know, Higurashi is a visual novel, later adapted into an anime, set in a sleepy, rural Japanese town that suddenly gets turned upside down when a tourist turns up dead in the wake of an annual festival. And it's up to the core cast of school-age kids to solve the mystery. Also, it's dark as fuck. While Silent Hill F is certainly a different story from Higurashi, you don't have to look very hard to see the similarities. Sleepy Japanese town, check. Core cast of school-age kids that have horrible things happen to them, check. Shinto mysticism, check. Weird Shinto mysticism, also check. But while Higurashi is a multifaceted series about the bonds of friendship and the strength of community with an ensemble cast, Silent Hill F is more of a personal journey centralized on a single character. Hinako has friends and family, and her bonds with them are important, of course, but the importance of those bonds comes from how they relate to Hinako herself. Much like previous Silent Hill games, the narrative is very selective when it comes to choosing what and what not to disclose about its protagonist. At the start of the game, we see Hinako storm out of her house after getting into a heated argument with her parents, but we're not made privy to what that argument had been about. Instead of just directly providing you with context, the game chooses to drip-feed you information. Let it be through vague conversations that seemingly allude to events that we as players aren't privy to, journal entries that periodically update with information just a little bit after it would have been relevant, or even puzzles that give us glimpses of insight on the thoughts and perspectives of certain characters. This made playing Silent Hill F feel like a puzzle in and of itself. However, once you reach the final hours of the game, in true Silent Hill fashion, all the details begin falling into place, and we start to see where the heart of Hinako's trauma lies. Hinako isn't like most other Silent Hill protagonists. James Sunderland, Alex Shepard, and the like have trauma that's born from major life events that left them shattered as human beings. Hinako's trauma, on the other hand, isn't from watching a loved one die or doing something deeply horrific that she lives in constant regret over. No, her trauma is systemic, and one that's not entirely unique for many women around the world. Before we get into it, though, I think when analyzing Hinako's trauma, it's really important to understand the environment she comes from. Not just in terms of her family and social dynamics, but the cultural and historic dynamics surrounding her as well. Setting the game in 1960s Japan wasn't simply a stylistic choice, it was a conscious one. The 1960s was a major decade not just in Japan, but across the world. It saw the first baby boomers born during the years following the end of World War II finally transitioning into adulthood, and the world that they were transitioning into was very different from the one that their parents grew up in. Japan was no different in this regard, but the mood was unique. When the war came to an end and the peace treaties were signed, Allied forces returned home to warm hugs and tender smiles, while those who fought for the Axis powers were left struggling to come to terms with finding any sense or meaning in what they'd fought for. The truth was, as many of them would come to learn, there had been no real purpose. Not one worth fighting for, anyways. The only thing they could do was go back home and try to move on with their lives. But for the Japanese soldiers, what they found was less than a warm welcome. Many soldiers saw that their homes were in smoldering ruins from endless carpet bombings. Those who hailed from Hiroshima and Nagasaki found that everything they had was simply gone entirely, as if wiped from existence. And those who still yet lived to greet these returning soldiers, the women, the children, and the elderly, didn't do so with the same kindness that their Allied counterparts received. The Bushido Code, or the Way of the Warrior, was a personal code of conduct and chivalry for the samurai class during feudal Japan. However, in the years after the fall of the Tokugawa shogunate during the Meiji era, the samurai class began dwindling away. Those who remained were forced to adapt to a new, modernized Japan if they wanted to survive. A Japan that was no longer led by a myriad of feudal lords, but rather a Japan ruled by a single government. Naturally, the Bushido Code was also forced to adapt as well. No longer were one's loyalties dedicated to local lords, but rather the entirety of the Japanese Empire itself. Bushido became a series of tenets for militant patriotism, imploring that there was no greater honor one could have than to die in the service of the Japanese Empire. By the end of the 19th century, this new Meiji era of Bushido had come to be adopted by the Japanese military as a whole. After all, what was a soldier in the Japanese military if not the New Age samurai? Then, after nearly a half a century of expansion and colonialism, the Japanese Empire all but crumbled overnight with the end of World War II. So, what did that say about those who fought for Japan but lived to see it surrender to the Allied powers? Had they not fully committed themselves to the cause? Were they cowards for not living up to the Bushido and laying down their lives? If they'd done so, would Japan have won? Or at least, as far as the widowed housewife or the orphan child was concerned, if those who'd returned had instead died honorably on the battlefield like they were supposed to, then perhaps those more deserving, like their husbands or their fathers, might have lived. This was just one of many factors that led to Japanese veterans being heavily ostracized. A massive population of young men who'd lived through the horrors of war, who spent years evading death while fighting in the name of an emperor they'd never met for an imperialistic cause that many of them never truly understood, were treated as failures and cowards. This brought about a generation of deeply embittered and deeply traumatized young men who had no support structure in place for healthy ways of coping with their experiences. Then, those same troubled young men would go on to find wives whose role in society was to serve and support their husbands no matter what. No matter how angry they got or abusive they were, they had to stand by their husbands. That was simply their lot in life, and this was the role they had to serve. And these couples, these toxic couples built not on a foundation of love and trust, but a foundation of anger and resentment and obligation, would go on to have children of their own. Children like Hinako. After years of seeing her mother deal with her father's relentless abuse, she's become jaded and cynical to the idea of marriage and family. And rightfully so in many regards. Hinako is keenly aware that her family dynamic isn't unique. In one of her journal entries, she makes note that her father is particularly bitter about his failed fishing business and the debts he accrued because of it, but even she doesn't believe that this is the only reason for him being the way he is. noting that all of the men in the town are just as crotchety and hateful as he is. This cynicism breeds a particularly confusing resentment she holds toward herself. She doesn't resent herself for being born a woman. On the contrary, she seems to feel very comfortable in her own skin. There are several times where the game goes out of its way to say that while Hinako does enjoy doing boyish things and that she tended to get along better with boys than girls during childhood, she does like to embrace her femininity from time to time. She's not afraid to admire something as being cute or otherwise indulge in her feminine side, but she does resent the implications of what being a woman means for her. Hinako recognizes that her parents don't simply have a bad marriage, but rather a product born from a systemic and cultural enforcement of gender norms. She also recognizes that when her time comes to get married, she believes that she too will have to subject herself to the same fate as her mother. Hinako saw for herself what happened to her older sister, one of her closest friends and confidants, when they were married off. Her sister became someone else. She became someone Hinako couldn't recognize anymore. And the thought of ending up like that terrifies her. Yet, the prospect of marriage isn't the only area where Hinako's femininity causes friction. Shu, her best friend since childhood, does see her as a friend, but he sees her as a woman first. Shu has a deep attachment to Hinako, and even goes so far out of his way to use his expertise on herbal remedies to make pills that help Hinako deal with her headaches, which mechanically take the form of pretty reliable and incredibly abundant health items. On the other side of this, though, while Hinako most certainly sees Shu as a friend, it's not very likely she sees him in that same romantic light. Even though this is a seemingly one-sided affair, it nonetheless causes issues with her friend Rika, who does have feelings for Shu. Very, very strong feelings. Even though Hinako has done nothing to try to lead Shu on, or treat him as anything other than a friend, even going so far out of her way to encourage Rika to pursue Shu romantically, Rika still holds a deep resentment towards Hinako. The reason this tension exists isn't because Hinako is Shu's friend, but simply because Hinako is also a girl, and therefore, competition. It's actually kind of crazy when you take a moment to look at the lengths Hinako goes to establish her own personal boundaries, only for them to be disregarded by everyone around her because she's a girl first and a person second. So when Hinako finds out that her father is having her married to some man she's never met before in exchange for a very handsome dowry, she loses it. All of her deepest fears and anxieties are made manifest, both figuratively and literally. Yet, while we see Hinako struggle against these fears in the material world, things take a bit of a shift when she finds herself in the spirit world. Silent Hill F's take on the infamous Otherworld is a bit different this time around. Instead of being a nightmarish hellscape, it's instead almost a dreamlike experience where Hinako finds herself wandering about a sacred temple to the Inari, or fox spirits. When first playing the game, there isn't really a lot of context as to what you're doing here or why you're here in the first place, much less what you're seeking to accomplish. Your only guidance comes in the form of a mysterious white-haired man in a fox mask who doesn't seem all that keen about going into the finer details of what's happening either. Also, if you don't think this takes place in the spirit world, come on. You pass through like 1,000,000 torii gates to get here. You're in the fucking spirit world. In these segments, Hinako is uncharacteristically compliant and agreeable. She carries an almost zealous amount of fervor in seeing her tasks completed, which includes her venturing through a temple to perform various rites, and holy shit! So yeah, turns out that all this was just an elaborate wedding ceremony that's as protracted as it is fucked up. It sees Hinako sacrificing everything that makes her, her. She kills her friends, gives Fox Mask her hand, or, well, arm, I guess, brands herself with his mark, and finishes it off by having her own identity literally carved away and replaced with a mask that she'll never be able to remove. Then she finishes it all off by taking the form of the fog monster that wreaked havoc on Hinako and her friends in the first place, before returning home and killing her parents. Look, you don't have to look very hard to see the symbolism here. Still, this version of Hinako that is willing to cast aside everything is starkly contrasted by the Hinako we play as in the real-ish world, who continues to fight and rage against the fate that's been decided for her. Even when confronted by her sister, Hinako stands firm in her defiance against, Hey, Hinako, you good? You sure are taking a lot of pills there. You might want to cut back a bit. Anyways, the real-world Hinako and the spirit-world Hinako come to blows, with real-world Hinako wanting out of the marriage, while spirit-world Hinako is all for it. Spirit-world Hinako doesn't stand a chance, though, because, well, how could real-world Hinako lose when the game gives you this many health items? Like, holy fucking shit. So, with spirit-world Hinako defeated, the real-world Hinako is free to...
米川により県警本部県道8号線にて当該事案の被疑者と思わしき女性に襲われた男性2名のうち1名は現在心肺停止の状態。
神楽町1より県警本部、一部被害者に使用された包丁ですが敷地内からは発見できず、被疑者は現在もこれを所持している可能性が高いと思われます。どうぞ。
県警本部から各局、女性被疑者は20代です。花嫁装束、身長は 160cm 少々、常吉神宮より逃走中、凶器を所持している可能性が極めて高い。各局はくれぐれも慎重に対応されたし。
神楽町1から県警本部、被疑者は赤と白のカプセル状の薬のようなものを犯行時に断続的に服用していたとのことです。
県警本部より神楽町1、それは式場内で発見された正体不明のカプセル薬と同一のものか。どうぞ。
神楽町1から県警本部、被疑者が服用する際に口からこぼしたカプセル薬を敷地内から
Oh. Silent Hill is well known for its personification of internalized trauma within its characters, but in Silent Hill those internal conflicts do exist in a very material sense as well, thanks to, the angry psychic girl a cult thought would be a good idea to set on fire. But Silent Hill F treats these struggles as more allegory, in the vein of something like a Satoshi Kon movie. You're not literally killing your friends or your parents, and the town isn't actually being overrun by monsters. It's just a representation of the struggle within Hinako's mind. Or is it? Look, you could literally spend hours trying to evaluate the minutiae of what is and isn't supposed to be real within this game. But this isn't a story about the hows and whats, but rather the whos and whys. And getting lost in trying to understand or explain the metaphysical mechanics of this story is just going to have you missing the forest for the trees. What matters is that Hinako fails to come to terms with her situation, and copes with all the pain it's causing her by abusing drugs, until she eventually snaps and goes on a killing spree. Many of you may have stopped at this point in the game. Although the ending was abrupt, clocking in at exactly 8 hours for me, it seems pretty par the course for a typical survival horror game. But Silent Hill F is not a typical survival horror game. Much like Silent Hill F, I too chose to omit some crucial pieces of information. When I first mentioned Ryukishi 07's previous work on Higurashi, What I didn't mention was what the game is most famous for. Higurashi is a series about failure. Failing over and over and over and over again. The story exists in an infinite time loop, where the player is forced to see the bad ending again and again and again as they're presented with impossible circumstances they have no hope of overcoming. However, it is through these failures that the characters are able to eventually learn and adapt and maybe, just maybe, find a way to break the cycle. Silent Hill F doesn't take place in a time loop, but it does follow Higurashi's sensibilities. So if you saw the credits roll once and thought you were done, I've got news for you. You ain't done yet. Just hit continue on your New Game Plus file and you're given the same opening as before. You can expect your second run to go much smoother than your first, mainly on account of, wait. Hold up, is that the brooch that the Fox Mask guy gave me? Whoa, hold on, whoa, wait, hold on now, wait, this is not the conversation we had last time.
ひなこにとってこれ以上の幸せがあるかあるわけがないどこ行く話はまだ終わってないぞひなこ
Right off the bat, you'll realize that things are very different, but also very much the same. Your second run opens up several new doors for you. Quite literally. New notes have replaced the old ones, some conversations are a little bit different, and some scenes have just been changed entirely. The first run of Silent Hill F is a very elaborate introduction to its characters. It's not until your second run when the game starts asking you the real questions. Who is this Fox Mask dude? Why is Hinako being married to him? What the hell's the deal with this doll? And wait, what's this about a water dragon? I don't remember that. Is that new? Huh. Well, if your first playthrough was meant to familiarize you with Hinako's situation, then your second playthrough is meant to serve as an opportunity for her to make an informed decision. Should Hinako accept her fate as a bride to Fox Mask, or should she reject it and choose freedom? Ideally without taking any of those pills along the way, because those things will really fuck you up. Don't take those on your second, third, fourth playthroughs. Although the gameplay elements themselves don't change on multiple runs, save for a few key moments toward the end, it is forgivably easy to speedrun. Puzzles will remain the same, assuming the difficulty remains unchanged. You get your fox arm early, which makes one of the more lengthy segments feel like a breeze. Also, you can get this kick-ass sword. Granted, you have to do a long-ass puzzle to get it. All in all, you can get your second, third, fourth playthroughs to be as short as 2 to 3 hours if you know what you're doing. Which is good, because by the end I was very done with the combat, and was mainly just there for the new cutscenes, which the game does have quite a few of. Characters are much more direct with Hinako after the first run, and journal entries continue to update with information that makes it clear there's much more to this prospective marriage than meets the eye. By using the brooch Fox Mask gave you earlier, you can now open up sealed boxes and doors to rooms that are carefully tucked away that may hold secrets that hint there could be something much more ominous lurking beneath it all. It seems Fox Mask's family are divine protectors of the town, and they may or may not be locked in an eternal struggle against an evil water dragon that threatens to destroy it. But, based on a few hidden notes you find lurking about, a marriage to Fox Mask might just be a pretense for something not good. Although you do get a lot more context on your second run, there's still holes in it. At this point, all you can really go on are vibes, and for me, those vibes were to get the hell away from this guy. So I put the pills away, grabbed that bitchin' sword, and told him not a chance, which he took less than gracefully. But hey, Shu's there, and it's awesome, and it was really cathartic seeing Hinako take her fate into her own hands as she fights a literal divine being. This is the kind of hype you expect from a real ending. No self-doubts, no fears or worries about what might or might not come from this. What matters is that Hinako is living her life the way she wants to live it, and not by the arbitrary confines of societal norm. Huh. Well, that's not good. Yeah, so turns out they weren't fucking around about that whole eternal battle between the Inari and the water dragon thing. Which means that by having Hinako reject her societal role, she's literally condemning the town to death. Yikes. So I guess Hinako just has to bite the bullet and go through with it, doesn't she? While the wedding ending is ostensibly the bad ending, if only for having one of the most horrifying scenes in the whole series, I don't think that any of the other endings give you quite as much insight. The wedding ending sees Hinako give in to what seems to be, on the surface at least, a genuine affection for Foxmask. Yet it comes at the cost of giving up her sense of agency completely. As a result, both Shu and Foxmask drop all pretenses about seeing Hinako as anything other than an object of desire, who exists for no reason other than for them to possess her. I'm actually really glad I saw this ending after I got the previous one, because it contextualized that, disregarding the whole town being flooded with toxic gas thing, running off with Shu wasn't such a great outcome either. Sure, as far as Hinako sees it, she's running off with her friend, but in actuality, she's just replacing one overly possessive person for another.
俺はダメな男だ。笑って祝福するつもりでいたんだ。でもできなかった。それどころか俺はお前に薬と偽って
それは
内なる自分と対話できる薬だが体質によっては非常に危険な薬だ。
どうしてそんなものを私に？
結婚を断って欲しかった。一番思ってるのは誰か気づいて欲しかった。俺は何言ってんだ。相棒の大切な日を祝福できなくて何が相棒ってんだくそ
It is a canon event that every woman on Earth has had some variation of this exact conversation with one of their guy friends at some point in their life. I'm not talking about the whole drugging thing. If that happened to you, then you should, call the police or something. I'm talking about finding out that your friendship with someone is never going to be the same again after shooting them down. And I think that's something that really makes Silent Hill F resonate with me in a unique way that previous ones haven't. Hinako's struggles, while not ones I've experienced personally, are ones that I have witnessed before. I've seen many women cast aside or disregarded just because they're a woman. And this is something that happens to a lot of people. Silent Hill 3 also delved deeply into the subject of femininity and female agency, but the story was so tightly wrapped into the overarching lore of Silent Hill that, as a result, the themes felt secondary to the narrative. Silent Hill F, though, isn't bound by those sort of constraints, and is able to fully commit to the bit. So, now with the full context of Hinako's internal struggle, that she yearns for agency in her own life, but does feel what seems to be genuine feelings of affection for this Foxmask guy, who we apparently had met before a long time ago, we're able to go into this final run where Hinako can truly come to terms with no, wait, no, not that one. No, God. God damn, oh my god, it's that fucking dog again, you son of a bitch! Anyways, Silent Hill F's final ending is truly something else. Much like the other endings, you don't really see the fruits of your labor until the last leg of the game, but there are some things you may pick up on throughout the early portions of your playthrough. You get some more insight, particularly regarding Rika and Sakuko, finding that, with time and self-reflection, they realized that the resentment they held toward Hinako was selfish and immature, and hoped to be able to rebuild a healthy friendship with her. This theme of self-reflection carries on throughout the playthrough. While the previous runs were filled with scenes of Hinako being filled with self-doubt, this time it's different. She gives up her brooch, recognizing that she needs to come to terms with herself before she can even think about marrying herself to somebody. Then, when given the chance to actually speak with her parents and confront them on the hardships they put her through, Hinako approaches it with a level head, recognizing that relationships can be complicated, even with family members, especially with family members. And while you shouldn't let someone's actions go without consequence, that doesn't in and of itself mean they have to be cut out from your life. Interestingly, Hinako doesn't come to a final decision regarding this. She simply acknowledges that if she's going to make a decision about what she wants her relationship with her parents to be, then it should be made thoughtfully, and not brashly. This mentality carries over into the final confrontation. Instead of fighting one another, her two selves look inward and find that they've been acting as pawns to opposing divine forces that seek to use them to their own ends. So it didn't matter which decision you made in the previous endings. It was never truly Hinako's choice, but rather a capitulation that tossed aside her own personal feelings. And the final boss fight encapsulates this really well. Mechanically speaking, you fight the same bosses from the previous two endings with minor reskins. But this time the Hinakos are swapped, as they recognize their true enemies are the ones who would try to impose their will upon them, and only by working together can they overcome these powers looming over them. And that's kinda beautiful. The one thing we don't get, though, is a decision of what Hinako wants to do about the whole getting married thing. For the time, the wedding is annulled, but she is going to have to make a choice about it at some point. But it's a choice that her two conflicting selves get to make on their own, without the influence of anyone but herself. I've seen this ending face some degree of criticism for lacking closure, but this is, again, I feel, failing to see the big picture. It doesn't matter what Hinako chooses. She could decide to cut off everyone from her life and leave town if she wanted to. Or she could decide to stay and accept Foxmask's proposal. It doesn't matter. What matters is that whatever choice Hinako makes is Hinako's, and Hinako's alone. And if she decided to accept a relationship with someone, be it Foxmask or Shu or Rika even for all I care, it would be done with the full understanding that she isn't simply an object, but a person. Her own person, who doesn't require the validation of others to give her life meaning. That is what the ending of Silent Hill F is about. It's not about divine beasts, or curses, or scary-ass monsters. It's about coming to terms with yourself and taking control of your own life. Because if you don't, others will take control of it for you. As I watched the credits begin to roll as the two Hinakos sat together atop a torii gate, I wasn't asking myself what they were going to do next, but rather, I was simply happy to see that after all the hardship they endured to get to where they are, they finally had the power of choice, the power of agency, the power to truly make a decision for themselves. Silent Hill F might not be considered a true mainline Silent Hill game, but even if you took the name Silent Hill away from it entirely, it would still be a great game. And I think that it's a welcome addition to the franchise. With a remake of the original Silent Hill on the horizon, it doesn't look like Konami is about to let off the gas for this franchise just yet. And if future Silent Hill games can bring the same level of quality as Silent Hill F, then I eagerly await their release.